The biggest reason that people abandon their Trello board isn't because Trello is complicated. It's because they've built it for the wrong person. They've built it for the version of them that is motivated, not the one that's tired and distracted and juggling way too many things at once. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Not only why that doesn't work, why switching to something other than Trello isn't going to fix your problem, and most importantly, what you can do to help yourselves avoid it. But before we dive into this, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial or upload. So one of the things that my clients know, and that you might know too just from hearing me say it here on the channel, is that one of my top priorities when designing a process and a Trello board is to prioritize self-cleaning automation. So I'm not one to automate everything right out of the gate, because realistically, you need to see your process work in a manual flow. Make sure that we're not missing any of the steps or any of the pieces before we go in and try to automate things, because it's always a lot more effort and can be more training on your side if you have to go back and rework the automation. So when I build Trello boards for clients, or honestly for myself as well, I assume that we're going to forget things. I assume that we're going to get busy and that sometimes we'll have to skip certain steps, or we'll have done them but forgotten to track them. And I don't see this as bad planning at all. In fact, I see this as realistic planning. I talked about this a long time ago when I was talking about habit building and learning how to build new routines into my life, and how the most effective thing for me has been to build in for the times when I'm lazy, when I don't feel like doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. So, for example, when I wanted to build more daily movement into my routine, I originally started with, specific exercises I was going to do, and they were like 20, 25 minutes a day, which realistically is hard to keep up with because life happens. And sometimes you don't have the time or space or motivation or energy to do that full thing. And so what ends up happening is that you let yourself skip it for a day. You lose that psychological momentum, right? And then it becomes harder and harder to get back into the swing. So what I did practically there was I gave myself options. I said, okay, look, I'm going to move, but I have this 20 to 25 minute video or whatever that I'm going to go do, a HIIT workout or whatever. Or if I'm not feeling that, I'm just going to get on my rowing machine for 5 minutes, just so that I was keeping up with the routine and the habit, even if I didn't have the motivation to do the big, long, full thing, right? And I use a similar philosophy when it comes to building a process for my business or for a client's business. And then ultimately that translates into how the boards are set up. So when it comes to keeping boards clean, I mentioned this at the beginning, that kind of self-cleaning automation. There's a lot of reasons behind this. I am not a psychologist, but I have learned from my own experience, with my business and then also with varying different clients, that psychology, it does have an impact. When you log into your Trello board and it reminds you instantly with a bunch of red due dates or just like massive lists of cards that you haven't touched in ages, these things psychologically make us feel guilty, for one thing, that we haven't been keeping up with what we spent time and maybe money building out. But even if it hasn't been that long, just coming into it and seeing a bunch of clutter, feeling like you have to do some cleanup work before you can actually do the work that you finally got motivated to go into the system for. You know what I'm talking about? So there are a couple of quick automation types that I want to talk about that are really simple, but I think you'll be surprised at how impactful they can be for you and your team psychologically when you come into your board, just feeling like you can jump in and run with whatever motivation got you there in the first place. So the first one, and I'll show a little bit of screen share here of what these things look like, how they interact and stuff like that. This is not a straight up tutorial of how to build it, but just giving you an idea of what that might look like. So the first one, and this one's relatively common, this is the idea of setting up an auto archive cadence. So you can do this in a lot of different ways. It depends on how your process works. If you complete an item and you don't ever need to see it again, like it's done, it's out of sight, out of mind, then you can just set things up that when you mark something complete, it's archived immediately. But sometimes for different types of workflows, we need that information to still be top of mind for a little while, maybe for the next month or so, right? Maybe it's because we need to be able to show progress to another teammate or to a manager of some kind, or maybe just as a good reminder for ourselves. Maybe monthly we like to look back and see everything that we got completed. That can be really helpful. So in those situations, marking a card complete would move it into like a done or completed list, and then we would set it up that on a regular cadence, maybe every 30 days, everything in that list would just auto archive itself. So it just kind of refreshes your board. And honestly, it can provide also the motivation, because now you have this empty completed list. You want to start filling it up with things that you've gotten done. So that's one of the first automations I typically help people set up. Another thing that's great about that, and this is just kind of a technical aside for a second, is that while Trello does allow you to have quite a lot of cards on an active board, it does eventually have a limit. But besides that, some of our cards may have a lot of attachments on them. They may have photos, they may have a lot of text and things like that. And eventually, having a whole lot of cards sitting on a completed list that aren't really serving a purpose for you is going to slow down the performance of your board. So you might as well just kind of clean those out, and keeping in mind that archived items are still completely searchable in the global search up at the top of your Trello boards. The second automation that I want to talk about, and this one, it's going to vary from person to person and honestly from task to task. So you do want to build in some sort of label or filter or something that will help the board know when it should behave this way and when it shouldn't. But there are times when completing a card is busy work. Okay. There are definitely times when marking that card complete manually is actually really important. Sometimes that's psychologically for you, just to have that, check kind of feeling. But also when we're talking about if we're collaborating with somebody else, they need to know, like they need that extra layer of security that you manually marked it complete. It's definitely done. They can trust that it's done, right? But for example, my content creation board, I plan things ahead and I schedule them in varying different platforms, Instagram, email, YouTube, whatever. I don't want to go into my content creation board and have everything look like it's totally done, because it helps for me to see, okay, well, how many of my prepped and scheduled things are there that are ready to go before the next empty card, right? The next one that I'm working on. Basically, how much buffer time do I have to get those things ready so that they're not late and they're going to go out on time, right? But I don't want to have to remember or spend the time to go in every time I go into that board and go, okay, well, this one was posted for sure. I'm going to check this up, right? Like that's extra work and it's a waste of my time. So I've built in an automation based on the due date that is looking at labels. So when I mark it scheduled, right, that is my manual, yes, this has actually been done indicator. But it's not published yet, therefore it shouldn't be completed. So when it sees a card with the scheduled label, I've said it's been done, and then the due date comes around, it just automatically marks itself complete. And I also threw in that it swaps out the label from scheduled to published, right? So, I mean, that's a really super simple workflow, but imagine if I had to go in and mark all of those cards complete and swap out the labels. That's just wasted time for me. And the last thing I want to talk about is how you can use automation to help reduce that decision fatigue that we often feel when we go into a board and we see so many tasks that are waiting for us. Ideally, when you go into a to-do board, keeping in mind that there are different boards that have different purposes, okay? So not every board is going to function this way, but if it's your command center or your simple to-do list, ideally, when you go into the board, the very far left list and the very first card on that list should be the first task that you should be tackling for the day. And if there are others that you have on deck, they should be same list, just underneath it. And so a lot of times we're going to call that our today, our now, our hot list, whatever we want to call it, list, but it should be reducing that decision fatigue for you. So one simple automation that you can build into that board is that when something is due that day, that it automatically moves itself to that list based on the date and time, right? So you can have it auto sort itself once all the cards are there, so that the first thing you should be doing is the first thing on that far left list. Now, that does require that you're a little bit more selective when you're putting due dates on things and when you're putting times on them. When you're planning ahead for when something needs to be completed, that's the moment for you to be thinking about when it actually needs to get done, right? And the priorities of those tasks, not the day you go in to do those tasks, right? That should be like a weekly review of your upcoming tasks, not a daily thing that you do every morning, because every little thing that is a barrier between you starting your day with motivation and actually accomplishing a task is going to make it that much harder for you to stay productive on a regular basis. So the overall idea here is that the goal is never to build the perfect or the smartest Trello board. The goal is to build the Trello board that you're going to still be using in 6 months. So the question I want you to ask yourself today is, what is the one thing that's coming to mind right now that you are manually doing that always feels like a waste of time? Because that is probably your first opportunity for automation. Leave your answer in the comments, and you never know, it might just turn into a future tutorial. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope you liked it, and more importantly, I hope you found it helpful. If you did, make sure you like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, all the things to help grow this channel and make this community something that I can give even more of my time and attention to. And if you really liked this video, share it with somebody else that you think will find it helpful as well. The online tools for your business do not need to be complicated and overwhelming. It's time to let it be easy.